So many Christian studies, so little wisdom. This is Church is Lame. Marky Mark, how's it going?
I'm doing all right there, Funky Bunch.
All right, we've got so much to get through this week, so let's go ahead and blaze through a couple headlines so we can get to the first big headline. The first thing I found in the Christian Post. I found the first two headlines in the Christian Post, kind of related,
Mhm.
both kind of like these weird semi surveys of why less people are going to church, right? And
I,
and
I'm sure this is accurate
Yeah,
information.
you're gonna love this. So the Christian Post came up with the great results that you know what it is? It's that people are indifferent.
That was their big find.
People are indifferent. So not that I don't want to stay on this one because we want to go to some more interesting articles. But like like we know that people are indifferent. Why don't you follow up with the question, why are people indifferent?
Did my dog die? It
Right.
didn't live forever. I mean, like, it's just,
Okay, moving on. Anyway, so the Christian Post agrees with us that people are tired of church drama, right? But when you
sounds reasonable.
when you go into the article, like they're thinking about like church drama, like infighting and rumors and gossip
Hmm.
and things like that. And it's like no, 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 no. That's not the drama that people are tired of. The people are tired of the drama that we talk about every week. Sexual scandals, financial scandals, leadership scandals. It's not the gossip that's killing your church. It's the fact that your church is every bit as corrupt as any other Wall Street company out there.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you a lot more than I could agree with them.
Yeah. Anyway, so why don't you go ahead and tell us about the article that you found because it's much more interesting than the typical nauseating. Here's why people aren't going to church anymore.
Yeah, like this is right there. Like when you talk about how evangelicals get wacky around election time, like this is just right there. So in Nashville, at Emmanuel Church, you have the Pastor Ray Ortland, and he decided to put a post on social media saying like, "I support Kamala Harris," which is not an especially interesting thing to do.
Yeah, like you and 45% of the rest of the country. Okay.
Yeah, and then he ended up deleting the post, and saying it was because it was being misinterpreted.
Do what?
Yeah, like I really wish that the article would have gone into like more detail and like what were the misinterpretations people were having. But it's just like there's just so many angles you could take on this one. And my angle on it is kind of like, yeah, well, you're a pastor, and so endorsing even on social media, like on your private or on your whatever, your personal page, um, like that could have some backlash. So like I would have thought to myself, yeah, I don't want to make that a public statement. Um, but I guess like he had some convictions about not voting for Trump. Like and he just kind of gave up on it. So I'm not really sure, like, if I should call him a coward or just a pragmatist.
Yeah, like this breaks the church in two ways, right? So
Mhm.
the one way is like, how weird is it that like all these Christian celebrities are dogpiling on this dude for having a political opinion, right?
Mhm.
And so like that's strange in and of itself. It's not unheard of course, right? Everybody in the land of churches has an opinion about something, right? So that's not a big surprise that people have opinions. It's interesting how this one issue gives everybody license just to like forget about the command to love God and love one another and just treat each other horribly, you know?
Yeah, the study I'm doing right now, it's for my own personal benefit. Is like, you know, many verses talking about how we should be, love one another. Of course, we should love our enemies as well, but then we should be humble and we should be kind and gentle with others and you know, all that good stuff. And like my general offense level at Christian celebrity to begin with, um, I just feel like if they're going to heap on this guy, they're just like if they're going to heap on this guy, they're just showing their true colors. And that I'm not saying that they're not saved, but I'm just saying that they need to slow their roll and take the plank out of
Yeah.
their own eye first. You know?
Yep. I think the other part of this is, if somebody sins against you, there's a reconciliation process, right?
Yeah.
But having an opinion is not the same as sinning against somebody else. You know? And so all these people are dogpiling on him as if he's like beaten them or something, done something to them personally.
Mhm.
And like this is not church leaders calling to somebody to repentance. This is just church leaders dogpiling on somebody for political gain. Yeah, and I don't get it. And so, just so we can keep this train moving, the other part of this that broke my brain is like, how did you post this and not think you were going to get some major blowback? Did you think it was just going to be nobodies that responded to this? Of course, you're going to get blowback for some larger name Christians. Not that anybody in this list is like really that spectacular Christian celebrity, but of course, you're going to get some blowback. Like, what kind of spineless twerp just takes the post down at the first sign of pushback?
Yeah, I mean, like, that was like a real Gen Z kind of a move,
Yeah,
which is not like an insult against Gen Z. It's just that like they inherited all this technology, but we hadn't fully lived into the consequences of social media yet.
yeah,
And it's like he should have known. And yeah, I kind of don't feel sorry for him because of it.
a little
Um,
bit. It's hard to fully get him off, take him off the hook. Like
yeah,
it's social media. Somebody's going to notice.
but we don't serve each other by being complete a-holes to one another when there is a disagreement of opinion. Um, it's just it's unbiblical.
Yeah, that's all there is to say about it. Let's move on. You found a another study, which to me is far more interesting than this last story. So why don't we talk about this new study you found?
Okay, so the Barna Group, in association with some Christian university in Arizona, who I will not name because I can't remember and didn't write it down. But basically, like they have a social research department that was funded by the Barna Group. And it just the subject is they were trying to figure out, what are the consequences on society of having unbiblical worldviews. And in this one, they were looking at mental health.
Right.
And like just no committal to saying, well, how much mental health problems are caused by an unbiblical worldview, because you shouldn't have to back up your claims with like data that can be verified.
Right. Especially in a
um
study, right? Study
yeah
in air quotes. Yeah.
but it's just it was some of the most vapid nonsense I've read recently. uh because I was going through the study. It's trash. It's just saying, oh well, we think this is true, is like all the whole thing was.
Yeah.
And that's garbage. You're trying to parade something around as having intellectual rigor, and it doesn't.
Right, and that's basically like when you go to the bookstore and you go to like the Christianity section, that's basically the entire Christianity section is people just writing from the hip, and there being very little research or academic rigor to it. And so here's the thing, anybody who's done sports or anybody who's been in the military or anybody who's done anything that requires a high degree of coordination, words is hard, between people or groups or teams or anything like that, they understand this concept of you execute the way you practice, right? The practice is the way you practice is the way you execute. So if you practice without doing everything exactly right, when it comes time to really execute it, you're not going to do everything right. And so
Mhm.
you know that when places like Barna put out these studies and they're not academically rigorous, there's not a sufficient sample size, all the wording is kind of ambiguous. You know that it was not only academically lazy, you know that most likely it's also theologically lazy. And that's
Yeah.
not a good place for church leaders to be, is in the theologically lazy place. Word is hard. Lazy place.
Yeah, and I think when I looked at the study, like, there was not a single citation. So they didn't even do the work to say, "Oh, hey, here's a peer-reviewed article that we can reference that says that X, Y, or Z is a problem." But the thing that really, really gets me on this one is that, we've seen this chain of, Christian toxic masculinity, and some of these guys are saying, "Oh, well, mental illness is just an imaginary made up thing. It's not real." So now you have the Barna group jumping in saying that, again, an unqualified amount, because they don't want to, like, say, like, how much, because again, there's no rigor here, but that a large degree or a significant degree of mental illness present in, especially like Gen X and Gen Z and, Gen Alpha, is the result of just thinking the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And that's failing to recognize a huge host of material conditions that we are all living in
Yeah.
that are difficult and tiring and divisive and all that. And it's like, no, you just need to think the right things about God. Well, what if, like, you and me don't agree with what Barna thinks that we're supposed to believe about God, because he thinks that, like, we don't have a biblical worldview because we don't conform to, his. It's like, it's the worst trash, and it's just insulting the people that suffer with these issues.
Yeah. It's the get out of jail free card that like, like all the overachieving Christian students, like they
Mhm.
all they all do that Bible challenge, Bible quiz thing. It's kind of like the Bible version of Jeopardy. And they
Yeah.
know, like, hey, when you don't know the answer is probably Jesus, right? And this is like the adult version of that. Well, we don't really know why these complex, like you know um depression and anxiety and all, we don't know why these things are chronic and that people can't get out of these funks. So we're just gonna say Jesus. It's so mind bending for sure.
Yeah, philosophically, it's this is just rank idealism.
Yeah.
Where you're saying, like, what's going on in your head is what's going to be reality. So if we just change what you think, then the entirety of your reality will change, and it leaves out, the materiality of our existence.
Yeah.
Jesus was both spirit and, as God, and human.
Yeah.
We all exist in that same duality. We were made to be created creatures, or embodied creatures, sorry.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's just like, so, like, theologically, I feel like this is really thumbing its nose just at what scripture tells us about what we are.
Yeah, why look at a problem with nuance when you can just take a simple answer,
Mhm.
simple way out? All complex issues have simple answers, of course. They must. My Bible tells me so. Okay. Even though it doesn't. But that's okay. Moving on. All right. It is election season, and in the vein of election seasons irritate me, so I'm gonna irritate you. Tim
Okay.
Walz just had his VP debate. And so today, on the internet, found an article that Tim Walz misled Americans on his radical abortion record. Pro-life leaders say, "Imagine that a pro-life leader has something negative to say about Tim Walz and his support of being pro-choice."
Yeah, and of course, that this radical pro-choicing thing, um, definitely doesn't include ideas about what pro-choice means, that are complete lies and BS. Um, definitely not saying that, like, they can just kill babies, like, after a normal birth or any of that. Just all this is based on the truth and is, on the level.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, church leaders, get your story straight, okay? Rick Warren, Saddleback Church, author of, Purpose driven Corvette ownership, um, purpose driven everything. If there's something that can be a noun, you can purpose drive it, you know? So for a long time, he gave kind of like, he has the stump speech. Speaking of politics, he kind of
Mhm.
has this speech that he has ready to go whenever he's a guest lecturer anywhere, and he's not necessarily speaking on a specific topic. He just kind of has this generic sermon ready to go, right?
Yeah.
And part of this sermon is he defines the word radical as not being like we use it to talk about terrorists and how they're crazy and stuff. And he talks about
Mhm.
how radical is the essence of something, you know? And so you guys need to get your stories straight. Is radical bad or radical good? Because Rick Warren, he has a lot more pull with me than your no name butt does, and he's telling me that radical is good. So you may want to avoid that word when disparaging other men of faith. Okay. Next, I just want to blow past this.
Yeah.
Next, the opposition, the political opposition, is not your mortal enemy. Yes, we
Yeah.
believe as Christians that life is special, that life has value, that it is spiritual, that all things are spiritual. So that gives us a point of view. That does not make every living single being with a different point of view the enemy. And we need to stop using the biggest, most awful, rage inducing words to describe every single person who doesn't agree with us. It makes us look small. It makes us look cowardly. It makes the church look like the only rhetorical tool we have in our toolbox is to be hyperbolic and to blow all things out of proportion.
Yeah. And, especially when, like, how many poor people did they step over to get, into their churches or their various venues? It's like there's a lot of hypocrisy going on that, and I like not saying that you and I are exempt, but
Yeah,
we're
clearly.
not that bad at least, I mean, it's like
Yeah.
we've made some progress.
All right, let's move on. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this one, so let's keep
Yeah.
going. We have, I couldn't believe it this week when I saw how many stories of sexual abuse there are. So I'm just going to blow
Yeah.
past a few of them so we can get to the one that we really want to talk about. Um, Bible study leader arrested on charges of child sex abuse. Youth pastor faces 50 years in prison for impregnating a girl. Former
Mhm.
members want investigation of the Morning Star ministry, sexual abuse, multiple cases. Former megachurch pastor Mike Baker gets a new building for a new church when his son and him, kind of, he's related to his son clearly. There were sexual abuse scandals there that he covered up. Which brings us to the actual story that we actually want to spend some time on. Group calls for investigation into Morning Star Ministries after abuse claims. Mark, you want to walk us through this?
Sure. So it's kind of impressive. And, it says, over 100 former ministry workers and their affiliates um, have signed a petition calling for an investigation. And, of course, sexual abuse of minors from, like, an important fellow there, Rick Joyner. Like, that's almost not shocking anymore. Um, but like for me, like the big thing is just like how aggressive um people around that situation are being with it. Which to me is kind of a positive movement. Usually it's just a few victims, um, or maybe more than a few victims, but like they're kind of alone in that journey, and then they're trying to get action taken. I mean, just like we talked about the SBC in the past and the problems that the Southern Baptist Conference have had. Um, so I'm glad to see that more people are beginning to band together and really to bear one another's burdens in love, like Scripture teaches us to.
Yeah, the one thing about this article that really took me by surprise um, is this notion among ministry leaders that that there's a statute of limitations, right?
Mhm.
And like, oh, because this issue is so long ago, um, we dealt with it then, and we dealt with it the best we could in a different time in a different culture, where the culture was to sweep it under the rug and make it go away. Like
Right.
it wasn't 2024, so we shouldn't be held to today's standards for things that we did back then. And I think for the church who claims to take the spiritual high ground, the moral high ground, the ethical high ground, the theological high ground, the every high ground under the sun, it's really just quite pathetic that that's your go-to excuse when it comes to
Yeah.
taking advantage of the most um,
Vulnerable. Yeah.
vulnerable young people who like they are literally programmed to put their trust in you.
Yeah.
And you betray that trust in ways they can't even begin to understand. And now that they're grown up and they actually do understand how this event years ago exploded their entire lives, and they come back and say, "You're not done being accountable for this yet." Like your response is not statute of limitations.
Yeah. It's there's no statute of limitations on sin. There is no statute of limitations on the damage our sin can do to somebody else. So to say like, well, that was a long time ago, it's like, but you have not yet asked for forgiveness from your victims, nor have you reconciled with them,
Yes,
nor have you done what is necessary to, at least attempt to undo the damage you did to them. Um,
right. Speaking of
like,
biblical reconciliation, like that whole idea, once again, like
mhm,
when 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 you've wronged somebody, it's not up to you to decide how to make it right. It's up to the person you've wronged to set that bar of this is
right.
what it means for all things to be made right again.
Yeah, but reconciliation is hard work, and
Yes.
let's face it, leadership in these organizations don't like doing that hard work. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
how many
like
times?
if that's the case, Mark, if and it is, I believe you, and I agree with you
Yeah,
that they don't want to do the hard work. Then why not just write the mother effing big big ass check and the NDA and make them go away? They don't want to do that either. They don't want to do it the
yeah,
hard way, and they don't want to do it the easy way. They just don't want to do it.
mhm,
And that makes it hard then to go back to your congregation and say, you should love God, you should love one another, you should feed the hungry, you should clothe the naked, you should house the homeless. Oh, by the way, you should improve yourself, and you should, the rising waters lifts all boats. And so, like, that's all hard work. And it doesn't really carry much weight if the leadership itself is not willing to do any of it.
yeah, and I think, like, beyond that, it would be helpful if people being aware of this, like, if this guy gets ejected out of ministry, he'll probably be like, Brian Houston and whoever else that like 6 months later, they're like, "Oh, I'm starting a new ministry." It's like, you haven't made restitution. You've lost your, um, not validity, what's moral authority to
Yeah,
be like a pastor. I mean, it's like, you don't have that.
yeah.
You need to humble yourself because clearly you cannot handle the responsibility.
You can't handle the truth. No.
Oh no.
I can never beat Jack Nicholson, so I won't even try that. All right, let's set this bird down. You know, uh, I think anybody who's been watching the last couple episodes kind of know that we've kind of done a return to form. That if we're not going to like become Christian celebrities ourselves with a million viewers, then we're just going to speak our minds. Gosh darn it! And so we're just going to land this plane with Persecution Watch. Um, Christian woman imprisoned in Iran without charges, right? Hey,
Mhm.
Christian, be a Christian, go to jail, do not pass go, do not collect $200, and certainly do not get due process, okay?
Mm.
150 Christians forcibly displaced in Mexico finally return home. Well, hey, if you're a Christian, uh, you know what? You just can leave your home and your possessions and go someplace where you're not going to get injured or killed or raped. Because if you stay, those are certainly things that are going to happen to you. Listen, all this to say that is if you are Kirk Cameron and you're upset about your book not being on the New York Times bestseller #1 slot for a bazillion weeks in a row, you can go stick it where the sun don't shine and go pound sand. You're not being persecuted. You just didn't write a good book. And for all you other American Christians who think it's persecution to tell you that your God doesn't mean much to other people, you're not being persecuted. You're just being told to go away. And sometimes I agree with those people that you should just go away.
Yeah, when somebody holds you accountable as a Christian, whether they are a Christian or not, when they hold you accountable for being a dick, you know what? Thank the Lord that he sent that messenger to you to correct you. You
Yeah.
know, that's all I got to say about it.
Absolutely right. There's some guy who's very, very popular on the socials, kind of like a kind of, I don't know, what do you call him? Like a business like productivity specialist, like empowering your
Mhm.
business to be star spangled awesome. But he's really cool, right? Because he doesn't really talk about business from like how do we maximize stockholder, shareholder profits or whatever. He's always trying to talk about like that. Like if you're not happy with your business, you should probably take a look at your management, right? Those kinds of
Mhm.
things. And so he kind of has a lot to say about a criticism. Like, and if you find yourself responding wildly to criticism, chances are the criticism's pretty accurate. And if you find yourself getting criticism and kind of going, hmm, yeah, maybe there might be merit there. Chances are that something worth maybe there is some maybe so maybe not room in there about that criticism. So
And
yeah. So all
yeah,
these people who just cry the loudest, like, are really the most guilty of the things they're being accused of. We're church is lame. We are not here to pile on, to be part of the dog pile of negativity on church leaders. Instead, this podcast exists so that when church leaders ask the question, why does nobody take church seriously? Why is attendance down? Why do people not go to their Christian leaders for life advice, for help? We Every week we find those stories that answer that question. We put them in a single place and hand them to you and say, here's your answer. And that's what we do. We do it in our own snarky, like we do it with a lack of reverence towards people. Reverence towards
yes.
God, not a whole lot of reverence towards people. Okay, you put your skirt on like the big hole just like I do. So, we don't have a whole lot of reverence for people, but this is the mission, is to seriously unequivocally answer the question of why church sucks. And so that's what we do. So if you've got something to say, by all means, we want to hear from you. Let us know, like why do you think it is people are leaving the church? Why do you think it is that the instinct of all church leaders is to sweep sexual abuse under the rug? We want to hear from you. So, do the comment thing and the thumbs up and the thumbs down and the like and subscribe and the rate and review and the click, 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 click things. Do them all. And if you really have a lot you want to say, by all means, shoot us an email, churcheslamepodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, go in peace and serve the Lord. Amen.